Hi, friends. I am Marie Woods, founder of Life Above Foundation, your host, a professional counselor, family and marriage therapist, and a wholeness life coach. Welcome to Relationship Real Talk, the podcast where we dive deep and tackle the toughest relationship challenges Christians face today. Are you tired of struggling with unforgiveness, past wounds, and conflicts? Feeling lonely or having trouble communicating? Wrestling with trust issues or trying to balance your faith with your relationship goals? Feeling stuck and stagnant in your relationship? You are in the right place. Here at the Relationship Real Talk, we get real and cover a wide range of topics, including relationship anxiety, trauma bonds, infidelity, estrangement, toxic dynamics, dating after divorce, and how to heal from relationship trauma and grow and build healthy and lasting relationships. We're not just about identifying the problems. We're all about finding real, integrated solutions from multiple disciplines and offering professional help from different fields to mend and strengthen your relationships. So, let's get started on this journey together, one honest, heartfelt conversation at a time. And today we have Dr. Dyana Robbins. She's back with us, and she will speak to us in the second episode. I can't wait to hear from her today. Her first episode is started with estrangement, her own life story. And she talked to us about, the seeds of estrangement and how it began in her life and where she is today and the effects of estrangement. So today we are going to carry this estrangement, this conversation further down the road from Dr. Dyana, her clinical work, her research and study, and look into the estrangement. So welcome, Dr. Dyana.
Thank you, Marie. It's great to be with you.
So help us to understand the estrangement. Give us a definition. So help us understand that.
Well, one of the things that's complicated in the research and helping us understand estrangement is that there's not a really great shared definition of estrangement. Researchers have defined it differently, but in general, we're talking about a growing sense of alienation between family members where there's a loss of contact or emotional closeness, and sometimes all contact has ceased. So depending on the study that you're looking at, estrangement might be defined a little differently. But in general, we understand that it's the loss of close contact between people that typically we would expect to have close relationships.
Yes. So just to remind our audience who Dr. Dyana she is, as she was talking about to talk to us about the definition of estrangement. So let me remind you that she is a licensed therapist and entrepreneur and advocate for the integration of spirituality with psychological interventions. And she has studied and worked in both the United States and Southeast Asia. And her private practice specializes in treating trauma with a blend of Christian disciplines and evidence-based interventions such as EMDR, both in Texas and internationally. So we fortunately, we had Dr. Dyana in our past conference, and she delivered a wonderful message about her work in EMDR and trauma-informed care. So she is a certified EMDR therapist, and she holds a PhD from Regent University. And her favorite pastimes are travel, reading, and the conversations over coffee. So we don't have a coffee; we have a virtual coffee today.
I love that works too.
Right. So let's carry on this conversation. And from your clinical work and research, you have done a lot of study on this topic. So what are the rates of estrangement you see, in the big context?
Well, anecdotally, therapists and other healthcare professionals are recognizing that estrangement seems to really be on the increase. Some of that is probably due to more comfort in talking about it. Social media has really, expanded people's comfort with being able to discuss, mental health or relational struggles. And so, as that has happened, more people that have experienced estrangement are speaking up about it. So that's probably part of the equation. But also, it does seem to be more common as our culture is becoming more polarized and less given to reconciliation. We're seeing more and more rifts in relationships that have difficulty ever being repaired. The research is pretty scattered as far as really trying to narrow in on the rates of estrangement. Some recent studies found 1 in 4 people have experienced estrangement or are currently experiencing estrangement in their families. Some other studies with younger college students actually found a rate as high as 44% among female college students. So if we consider that, that's a lot of brokenness and a lot of disruption to family systems.
Oh, wow. That's a stunning, I mean, to me, the number. So you were mentioning about through the definition, estrangement basically is kind of a disconnection, disjoint from the body, let's say the family, close ones,
Yes.
contact. So it starts like from last time your personal story, from somewhere can be neglect or conflicts, unresolved conflicts, and to all the way maybe abandonment or just totally lost in touch. And so we live in
Yes.
a broken world, and there's a lot of brokenness around us, like what you mentioned about, and people from separation, for instance, in marriage to divorce, and children estranged from parents, so on and so forth. So this is a heartbreaking thing. I mean, it's really hard to navigate relationships, when you don't have the intervention or good tools, strategy, when difficulties arise in relationships and end up in brokenness. So
Yes.
so I want to know the nature and the course of estrangement, if you will. And from your clinical practice, can you give us some examples or case study like that?
Sure. Well, I think estrangement, as we referenced earlier, can look different, in families and between, people, and also the culture and society that a person is in is going to affect what estrangement looks like and how it occurs. Certainly, we know that one of the main drivers of estrangement is a conflict in values between people. And so they see the world differently, they value different things, they orient their lives very differently, and they don't find that they can really tolerate or accept the differences that exist. This is especially prevalent with marginalized people.
Right.
We're looking at people with mental health struggles, emotional struggles, those who have, other minority status or have, sexual orientation that is of a minority group. They have much higher rates of estrangement from family members than those who are in the majority culture.
Mm.
So that's a really painful, place for these people to be. They've been, already in a situation where they're experiencing more challenges than people who are not in those cultures, and then they have estrangement on top of that. So this is a place where Christians can really step in to try to demonstrate and share love and encouragement with those who are hurting really badly. As far as the course of estrangement, sometimes it appears to happen very abruptly. There will be maybe one big argument or something like that that really ends the contact between people. But usually, that even when that's happened, there's been a long building of tension in the relationship or a lot of unresolved conflict that has happened that brings people to a breaking point. It is much more unusual for people to just out of the blue or seemingly out of the blue just kind of disconnect because there is such a pull to stay part of the family structure.
Mm. Yes. So to bring this understanding of the nature and the course of estrangement can help us look into the situation, and maybe we can do some prevention earlier on, to resolve the conflicts, improve communication, help each person in their role to better understand another person, so to speak. So yeah, I feel like you mentioned about as Christians, we see this chasm, this gap, in the younger generation, also between younger generation and older generation, and also in different cultural contexts. And people, their communication lifestyles are different, and their worldviews are different. So really, I feel like as Christians, we called to make a peace, right? We're the peacemaker. But yeah, I feel like it's a calling for all of us in this chaotic and broken world. And how can we be those reconciler, the peacemaker? I know there's a whole another topic, and this can opened up a lot of ideas there. But we will save that for later. Okay. So let's talk about.
Okay, sure.
Let's talk about definitely there's the effects of estrangement. Okay, so I want you to talk about the short term or the long term. What the different layers, from the short term, long term effects of estrangement. Yeah, help us to see that.
Short-term effects, whether the person experiencing estrangement is the one who chose to end contact or the one who is just experiencing it on the receiving end, is overwhelmingly a sense of shock. And the reason for that is that even if there was a long tension in the relationship, once that contact ends, there's a reorientation of a person's, life away from that relationship. And that is a really disturbing process for a lot of people. There is a sense of shock that it hurts maybe as much as it did. Or in the case where the estrangement was necessary, perhaps after a lot of abuse or other really destructive behaviors in the relationship, sometimes the shock goes the other way, where the person's like, wow, I didn't know what it was like to live without this kind of, problem in my life. But overwhelmingly, people experience a sense of shock and reorientation that takes a period of time to adapt to and to learn to live differently without that relationship being so present.
Yeah, definitely. I can see, once the bond is broken, and there's disorientation, then reorientation, from the connection, unhealthy connection, whatever it looks like, to become individual. Lose that context of connection. And now what? And who am I? Like people, they are separated or divorced, and they lost their identity without the context of a relationship. So we see there's a lot of things going on in individuals' lives. When estrangement happens.
Right. You had asked about some case studies a moment ago, so I just want to share, one or two with you quickly that we're in this, place of experiencing short-term estrangement. I have worked with parents who have had their adult children, in their minds, seemingly suddenly disconnect. And in the cases that I've worked with, that has been done in a rather, sudden, abrupt, and rather angry way. And what I've seen short term for those parents is a great difficulty in even accepting what's happened or understanding it. And so the research talks about this process a little bit too, but there's a lot of rumination that goes on in those early stages, like how did this happen and why is this going on? And it can be really difficult to think about anything else for people who have been, left very suddenly. So there's a lot of, perseverative thinking where they really struggle to think about other positive things in their lives that help them, adapt and cope. It's just so traumatic often for people who have been, suddenly hit with this, that the short term, it looks a lot kind of like, a ship being tossed on waves, so to speak. They just can't get their grounding. They're not able to know how to move forward, and they feel stuck in that process for, some period of time.
Mm.
The longer term effects that I've seen in my practice have been, a growing sense of acceptance, which is necessary for healing. That does eventually come with enough support and with an understanding that a person has done what they can to reconcile the relationship. They're going to have to move forward without it. As painful as that is, they are able to do that. And the long-term effects just kind of compound, to be honest with you. Even in my own situation, how there's so many holidays and birthdays and things that have been missed together. And even if we come to accept that, the grief and the loss that we carry, it typically compounds over time because there's just more things that these people have been absent from in a person's life. There's a lot of regret, maybe not about the estrangement. Again, that might have been the healthiest choice someone could make, but there's a regret for what has been lost, even in that choice. And that's a painful burden to carry. And I think that a lot of people on social media and just in popular culture, as they talk about cutting people off, they express that as like, oh, it's been so healthy for me. And that may be true in some cases, but what they're not also talking about often is the ongoing burden that estrangement causes in a person's life, even if it was a healthier choice. You don't just go on and, be able to experience life without the effects of what that relationship meant in the past, but also what its absence means.
Mm. Wow. So I heard from you this estrangement cause, the effects of it's like a trauma, since you're a trauma-informed
Mm-hmm.
therapist. So
Yeah.
it's definitely it's a disconnection, right?
Mm-hmm.
So in the relationship, whatever the causes can be, the hardship, or in your case, it's tough situation that people
Mm-hmm.
want to live a healthy or normal life, and this current dynamics just want to support or help the person become who they want to be. And so
Yeah.
out of the scenario and come out of the situation, and I heard from you that create another uh environment or space, and the person has to process. I mean, it's not that you end the relationships and then suddenly everything just become wonderful. It's still
Right.
dealing with the residual and what's
Mm-hmm.
left. And it can be a broken relationship, broke up the relationship,
Mm-hmm.
between others. It can be a divorce. It can be, children estranged from parents and, left the parents. And by the way, that was kind of my story when I was early 20s.
Yeah.
I loved my parents, just went to a big city, pursue my own dream and life. And that's kind of like an
Mm-hmm.
estrangement, and created some
Sure.
hurts in our lives. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but anyway, I'm just saying, yeah, we have to deal with this, our decision making, our choice, and
Mm-hmm.
how can we grow after the estrangement from there, right? And have
Right.
you heard any story and see some cases that people from estrangement, then they gain the healing, help they need to grow, and then
Mm-hmm.
they might come back to reconciliation afterwards. Is that, do we forever estrange from loved ones, family, or is there a possibility or hope for people, looking for something might be different than the current experience of estrangement?
Yeah, I'm so glad you asked that because yes, there's a lot of hope. Um, Again, research points us to the fact that estrangement can be a temporary state. And in some cases, I would argue it might even be a necessary state for enough healing to occur for reconciliation to be possible. And I think that, a lot of things affect whether that will happen. Number one, the reasons that estrangement was, enacted. but also the manner in which it was done has a big impact on the potential reconciliation. There's a great difference between an estrangement that's done through drifting apart over time, or a conversation that says, I need to take some time, with less or no contact. But I will, check on you at a certain point, and see where we are and if we can move forward, versus a really violent verbal ending, of a relationship. There's a lot more to repair with that often that makes it harder. But I think the process of personal reflection and understanding our role in every relationship that we have, and being willing to take ownership of our part in those relationships is something that is essential to reconciliation down the road. Even if we were the one that we clearly believe was most offended against, we have to look at, well, did I maybe do things that enabled that behavior? Or did I not confront it and led a person to believe that that was okay to treat me that way? And so I cooperated with it, and being able to look at those things and heal them is really essential to reconciliation, but also building a healthier relationship that you'd be glad to be part of in the future. Right. And that process really has to happen on both sides.
Mm-hmm.
I have seen that happen, right? I have seen families reconcile. I have a friend who even divorced and remarried the same man because of the work that they both did. But they both say they would not have been able to do that staying married to one another, which is a tragedy that it got to that point. Mm-hmm. But it's also a really beautiful picture that I don't think things can ever get to a place where there's no hope if both parties are willing to work at it and to do what it takes to reconcile.
Mm, yes, good point. It takes two to dance. So
yes.
So there's a process of grieving the loss of the relationship, let's say, after estrangement. Yes. And there's sometimes people have this whole resentment or anger, sadness, all the emotions after estrangement, I'm assuming. And and people have to heal from that broken place and to realize who he or she is without this person, this relationship in their lives, right?
Yes.
And that you were talking about, two parties, we have to take action, make efforts, for better to grow from the brokenness and to maybe do more self-reflection, looking back and within and what's going on, how have I contributed to the situation, right? And so that kind of, sounds like a direction after the estrangement for two parties, and to look within, maybe seek out for professional help, help with the relationship. Because be honest, we didn't grow up educated with what is a healthy relationship, how to do relationships, right?
Most of us didn't. No,
most of us didn't. So we were just young. And so I think, this is a relationship, real talk. And we hear real stories from yours and mine. And people are listening to this. And, we have seen estrangement really all around us those days.
Yes.
Now, I think it's a big concern on God's heart as well. That's why he sent his son died on the cross for us to reconcile with him, right? So this reconciliation is really big on God's heart, I believe. What do you think?
Yes, I agree. And I want to be sensitive as we say that's not with a spirit of condemnation for those of us who are experiencing estrangement, right? I think that there is a huge stigma tied to estrangement, especially in Christian communities. And that may be not the stigma, but the sense of pressure to reconcile may be really appropriate where there's clearly someone who's being sinful or stubborn or selfish and they aren't wanting to do the work. We need to encourage them. Yes. Let's look at that. right? But there are people who are estranged for reasons that are healthy and good, like the protection of vulnerable people,
Right.
or the sense of trying to heal enough that they're able to move forward, differently. And I think we have to be sensitive and create space for that. But yes, God's desire would always be, for true reconciliation to happen, where both parties experience healing and renewal at a deep level.
Mm, Yeah, so good, so good. So we're going to have that conversation in other talks with later on. But I think this is such a hot topic, and we really
Mm,
need to pay attention to it. And because we cannot just go on life, just sweep this under the rug.
mhm.
Meanwhile, we suffer from this.
Yeah.
We're going through life with those scenarios. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm glad that we have this conversation today. And do you have lots of words what you want to say to our audience for our second episode? And um, yeah,
Sure. Well, I just want to encourage everybody that if you're experiencing estrangement or if you're considering it, that seeking help and talking with others about it in healthy, constructive ways is really important, I think, to doing it well or to healing the estrangement. Um, it's difficult sometimes for us to be honest about where we are because there's a lot of misunderstanding and pressure that we should be always close to our family. Um, and I think finding our strength in the Lord to be able to confront something as painful as estrangement is really important. And I just appreciate so much your willingness to address this topic, Marie, and to bring it out into the light a little bit more in this community. It's something that I know personally and professionally is really needed. So thank you so much for the opportunity to talk about it today.
sure. Yes. I know personally, from your story, my story, we have been through some difficulties in relationships and including
Mm.
estrangement as well. I think it's
Yes.
better we address it as a therapist, right? As
Mhm.
helpers. So I think it's a healthy thing for us to just
Yeah.
open up and talk about this, and hopefully we can come up some good solutions in the future. Don't just go
Mhm.
hide or be silent, knowing that we all struggle with this. We all face this. I mean, not everybody,
Mhm.
but maybe people around us, maybe somebody from our family or friends or relatives.
Yes.
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 So, yeah, this is good. And I'm looking forward to our next episode. Do you know what we're going to talk about next
Me
one?
too.
Yeah.
Yeah. In our third episode, we're going to look at what scripture has to say about estrangement and honestly about reconciliation, because I think we have to look at both sides of the coin to be able to understand this issue well. So we're going to examine that and have some real talk about what that looks like in a very practical sense.
Sounds exciting. Yeah, I cannot wait to our third episode. And again, come back to what Dr. Diana, she mentioned about, if you are in the middle of considering estrange or leave or apart from, separated from your partner, your family, and if you're considering that in the process, I would encourage you,
Mhm.
like Dr. Diana said, seek out for help. For some, godly maybe a mentor, maybe a therapist, maybe a coach,
Mhm.
have someone come
Mhm.
alongside you,
Yeah.
maybe offer you some wisdom or, a good support. So that's what I would encourage you. Thank you so much to speak to us today.
Oh, thank you, Maria.